Good day everyone, so hope you're all doing really well. A lot of you've heard of the phrase that Hoyo tries to invent problems and then sell you the solution. And to be honest, I want to completely challenge this notion because I think not only is it incomplete, it's also very damaging in that it can actually encourage people to spend more money than what they should in the game. So let's talk about the one thing that actually matters, and that is your account progression and the ease of convenience. That is ultimately what Hoyo tries and sells you, and what they want to monetize in the game, and this in and of itself has shifted over time. You see, in the past we had things like, for instance, a character called Hu Tao, and she had a bit of a defect. If you used her and you did a charge attack, it consumed stamina. Now, if you were mechanically very good and you had brilliant artifacts, this was just a bit of something that you can play around, but it did require a bit of skill and some good luck farming artifacts. But if you get Constellation 1, well, suddenly your DPS is more consistent, and having more consistency and more throughput of damage means that effectively you could say that I've gotten slightly higher artifacts and better skill that I've compensated for by getting this Constellation. And it certainly does seem to fit the narrative of, hey, here's a problem we've invented, and here's the solution that we try and sell you. But here's the problem. Not everyone is going to need the solution, and that's my first problem with the argument. And the second problem is that you're telling a lot of F2P players that this is the socially accepted way to play Hu Tao, which means the gacha company is actually having the last laugh. What I mean by that is that for people where account progression, especially if you don't pay and you don't buy or top up in the game, your account progression is highly tied to the amount of primo gems you get, as well as to the gacha luck that you have. So if someone, and a lot of content creators, tell you that, hey, you know, this is the problem Hoyo's creating, bad Hoyo, Cyrene E2, etc, then obviously you're going to be under the impression that, well, either get good, get lucky with RNG, or just effectively pay up with your account progression or pay up with your wallet. And that is the dangerous perception that I want to try and counter. And the way to counter this is by actually seeing what the monetization direction for the game is, and then understanding that the account progression and ease of convenience is something that the game monetizes, but not just in the form of creating problems with solutions, but in other devious ways that you have not thought about. So let's get into the bulk of the video. When it comes to Genshin Impact in its early days, think of Mondstadt and Leeway and the 1.0 version, the game truly was, by today's standards, it kind of sucked. It sucked because a lot of the quality of life wasn't there. You could only progress and you only had 120 stamina. It was really very painful, but you know, it was still consistent way back when. All those bundles in the shop were still there, but the whole point way back when of playing Genshin Impact was to do the exploration and get your character to level 90. Things like the end game and the Spiral Abyss, they were really just an afterthought. It was properly just a bit of end game for you to test your progression and wait for the next installment. Fast forward to today, well, we've got lots of conveniences. Characters can progress and explore very easily. Menu interfaces are sleek. There's a lot less time that's being wasted. There are lots of events where you can farm any day of the week, leyline overflows, all of these sorts of good things, because nowadays you're not just going to rock up with any old team of characters that you like and some YouTuber like me telling you how to make the most of what you have. No. The more recent way and the more socially acceptable way is for you to get multiple characters, yes, multiple characters that all work together to beat a specific boss gimmick, and if not, then no amount of skill, no amount of good RNG luck is going to help you. You're then going to pay a part-time penalty to then try and take out the enemy. And if you play a game like Stygian Onslaught in the in the highest difficulty mode, then yeah, effectively good luck. You're not going to be able to consistently get all of the rewards as an F2P, and even if you do beat it as an F2P, you're not going to beat it next time, certainly. And even if you do manage to do it, well, you're not going to get the highest tier of rewards in any case by design. So clearly something is very different here, if you've kind of noticed from the way I've described it. instead of the progression and the exploration and all of these sorts of things being monetized, it's all now about the combat and the end game. It's almost like to say, yeah, all of these content creators and the content creator server, they're going to tell you and show you exactly how the final product looks like, and that is what you're going to aim for, not getting to that. And that's how the shift in monetizations happened, because you see, the thing that Hoyo has realized is, yeah, I can make characters like a Resley that's problems fixed by a C1, but that's not really going to help me if players get lucky in the gacha, get in the RNG for the gacha system. It's not going to help me if players get some good artifact luck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mediate over the good and the bad luck by effectively forcing you to have multiple characters and multiple units and specific enemies for specific gimmicks, and this all started in Fontaine even, and that is how we're going to then shift the monetization. So effectively, in the old days, yes, it is true that Hoyo created problems that they try to sell you the solution to, but Hoyo has since then wised up to the fact that, yeah, people can just RNG their way out of it. Nowadays, you can't RNG your way out of it as easily, and what Hoyo now does as well, and I think it's a very clever thing, they try and release units to make all the units still viable again, because they know that by doing this they can still keep you into playing this game instead of just giving up and saying, well, okay, I've had a good run, but these guys have taken all my amounts and efforts because I need to have the new characters, so what's the point of playing if it's always just power creep, power creep, power creep? Well, that's what Hoyo does. They give you Imaginarium Theatre where your older units matter. They give you a new upcoming units that will enable all the specific units to get buffs when they're in specific teams, etc, etc. I mean, the gacha company is very, very sly in the way they do this. But if viewed through the lens of making the game convenient, reducing the amount of RNG luck, the amount of mechanical skill by giving you constellations with extreme power-up boost, or in the case of Kokomi here, turning her into an effective DPS at C6 and all of these sorts of things, that's just the way the game monetizes itself, and that's the way the gacha game goes forward. And I think if you have this perception, you yourself can be guarded against any of the traps. And we saw this trap with Honkai Star Rail and Cyrene, or Cyrenia, however you want to call it, where a lot of people said that you need her E2 in order to be functional. And yet Hoyo was completely silent on the matter. In the live stream they showed an E6 Cyrene, and it's like, no, they knew exactly what they were doing. And the very fact that people are calling it out and are saying, oh, this gacha company is so bad, it's the problem, they try and sell you the solution, that's exactly what Hoyo wants you to hear. They want you to know that that is the solution, because that is exactly the perception that's now been created, and that there is no other alternative, whereas the actual alternative is to get good artifacts and then to have proper knowledge of the game, or just to have a bunch of other pink-haired characters that also fit really, really well with the character, in which case you don't need the E2, but you need the other characters for Cyrene to be really, really well. It's so clever, because in a certain sense, the very criticism that we give towards the company is actually being used as motivation by F2P players or other people to give up their account progression. In other words, the amount of progression they can make towards building their characters and the primo gems and clearing the game and so on. And then they can just sell you the convenience. And once they sell you the convenience, well, hey, it's there. And I can promise you, it's really an attractive convenience to sell, because if I have to grind out this weekend or for the next 4 weekends 8 hours a day to get a bunch of primo gems or jades or whatever, man, I just pay $100, and you know what, I still have my life. I can go out with my friends, I get back, I play the video game, and Hoyo knows it. That is the gacha model. So that's the video that I wanted to make. I just wanted to warn people not to be cautious about the sentiments that are put out online, because I do think that sometimes these things can have unintended consequences, and also that these lenses of viewing the gacha games and the way the company operates are sometimes insufficient. And by having a more sufficient and global view, you can actually understand what is acceptable to you and what's not. In my case, in certain senses, I'm a very busy guy, I've got a very great career, but that also means that with the extra amount of money that I have away that I get from investments and stuff, I can pay for the convenience because it's fun to do so. But even for myself, it's also important not to get carried away by seeing all of the inconveniences and thinking that, well, okay, I can just pay my way out. So it's just, as much as this is a lesson for other people, it's also a lesson for myself, and that we've all just got to be very, very careful. Not just about the gacha games and their monetization practices, but also about how we frame and reference and think of the problems, because just the way we think about what the gacha game is doing and how we feed into the popular narrative, that in and of itself may unintentionally actually do more harm. Alright, thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you think about this topic down below. Cheers!